This is Sue Ellam, of the founder of Soulfully Connecting, and today I've got the great pleasure of interviewing Gabriella Guglielminotti. Oh, sorry, I practiced it before and I got it right. Guglielminotti Trivel, and she's the author of a book called Antarctic Odyssey: A New Beginning. Hello, Gabriella.
Hi, Sue. Nice to see you again and talking to you again.
Yes, and I'm sorry I messed your name up, but it is a bit of a tongue twister.
Oh, well, that's the test for every interviewer, you see. Well, I can tell you this, it's an Italian name, and even sometimes get not pronounced correctly in Italy. So,
you know, well, there you go. I'm absolved.
Yay.
So today I want to interview you. I've interviewed Gabriella before about who she is and her business and Flying Inspiration, of which she's the founder. Today I want to interview Gabriella about her book. And so what exactly prompted you to take this trip to the Antarctic?
Okay, I went to South America and Antarctica in March 2008. So basically exactly 8 years ago, and a month, because I set off the 1st or the 2nd of March. I went there because I just been coming out of a very long transition period in my life. In 2005, I had split from my husband and lived, parted under the same, roof for a couple of years until the divorce process finished. So those 2 years were challenging, to say the least, and I really needed something to happen in my life to be able to push the reset button. And somehow this came in the form of a strange Australian guy talking at an event in Old Court, and where he was convincing or trying to sell his adventure to Antarctica. And the purpose of this adventure would be to basically go there with other fellow members or explorers to face one's own fears and limiting beliefs. Now, for me, there were multiple reasons that this was appealing. Well, first of all, a couple of years earlier, in 2006, I had trained in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, which is all about the mind and how to use your mind to get what you want and to maximize, your reaching your goals and what you want in life, etc. So that obviously it was interesting for me, because facing my fears, it meant that I wanted to test myself firsthand, so not just the academic stuff. So that was appealing. At the same time, though, this was June 2007. So my divorce process finished, but as you can easily imagine, after especially 2 years of such acrimonious time, I was really destroyed. I mean, emotionally, as a woman, psychologically, I really needed the reset button, or maybe better said, I needed to recharge my batteries and to find the connection with my soul again. So what happened was, when I heard from a friend who went to this event and heard Peter Bland talking about this adventure to Antarctica, I thought, oh, okay, I need to go and check it out. Not that I have a plan in my life to go to something as cold as Antarctica. Forget it. I love the tropics.
Me too.
So it wasn't really like under my type of tea, my type of thing, or better said, my cup of tea at all. I think there was this appeal of, yes, testing myself, as if I hadn't been tested enough. But yeah, I'm kind of an adventurous spirit. So I thought, oh, that would be nice. And also the other thing that for me, it was a big appeal is the fact that Antarctica is possibly one and the only continent where, as far as we know, in our very short recorded history, there's never been a war, or where if there were civilization, we don't know yet. One day the ice might melt, we might find remains, but we don't know. So it's a place where maybe could be classified as peacefully friendly nature reserve. So the two things attracted me: a peaceful place. Hey, after all that war, in a war for 3 years with my ex-husband, first. Second, nature has always been my biggest teacher. So I always felt appealed since ever to natural places, resources, reserves, or whatever. So that for me, it meant, recharging my batteries, recharging my soul, finding a way back home. And so I went and gave it a go, and I listened, and I had also a good chat with him directly. And what happened was, while he was explaining to me, why he was doing what he was doing, besides he had been himself to the magnetic North Pole and the magnetic South Pole himself, he had already been. And then he started taking people to Antarctica, because possibly, as I did, he fell in love with the place. and so he started doing that as a coach, etc. So basically, I found myself, imagine, in the lobby, these big events where there are many speakers, very crowded and also far. And so in the lobby, outside the main meeting room, I was trying to figure out who this man called Peter Bland was. And I found myself realizing that I had in front of me somebody who was doing something that I would have loved to do. And so I thought, maybe I should really go. And so I knew that once the legal proceedings would have been finished, I would get a settlement. So I would get some money. And I thought, you know what, it might be the right time to do this, to go on this crazy thing, because when you are so open, exposed, vulnerable, distraught, or whatever, you are more connected maybe with your unconscious, so you do crazy stuff. When everything is going fine, you have a balanced life, it's more difficult. So I thought, I will have some money coming in, let's use it for a good purpose. And so I ended up signing up. Yes.
Sorry, I caught you in the sentence. Sorry. What expectations did you have of your trip? Did you have any specific expectations of what it was going to give you?
I explained the reason why it felt appealing, and so I decided to go. Then there was a gap of 9 months between I signed up, because that was June 2007, and I would go on this expedition in March 2008. So there would be then 9 months. Okay, in those 9 months, obviously, as you can imagine, my mind drove me bonkers a bit, because of course you start thinking about it. You go through different phases when you think, I'm mad. Why did I decide to do that? Why am I going there? And all sorts of questions that can pop up, So in those 9 months, it was so challenging, really, much more than the deed in itself, the travel in itself. Because when I eventually found myself on the brink to set off to go, it was, now I just have to go, So yes, there were expectations. I tell you also which was my biggest one. My biggest one was possibly to really refine myself and reconnect with my spirit, you know, my inner spirit that definitely had died a bit on the way in this huge, long legal process, which is only the surface of it. But a divorce is quite difficult to digest, especially when not both parts are amicable, and maybe because there's a part who doesn't want it, the other one wants, but it's all a mixed thing, you know, it's a gray area, yucky territory. So I was hoping to regain that old me that was, you know, Gabriella, going and adventurous, you know, a go-getter and all the rest of it. And also, for me, I'm very visual. I love taking pictures. I love lights and nature. So you can imagine being very appealing for me, the idea of seeing all the landscape that, you know, okay, I've seen glaciers when I was little with my parents go trekking in the mountains, but it's not like a whole continent, you know? Yeah. So it had that appeal. And also, I was thinking, oh, I go in a pretty unspoiled place. Not there are many left on the planet. And so I felt that would be nice. It would soothe my, you know, my heart, you know, hopefully it will heal me. Those were some of the expectations.
Yeah. It's quite you know, coming out of it is a tricky one. But you mentioned the landscape. What exactly was it like? I mean, you imagine just kind of loads and loads of ice, but was there anything growing there? Was there any vegetation that could survive that cold?
Yes. When we went, obviously it was summer. Well, actually the end of summer. Even if Antarctic summer is really not like anywhere else in the world summer. But anyway, so it's when the ice is the thinnest, and there are places where you can see some mosses or stuff like that. Yeah. Not that I've seen much, because there was snow everywhere I went. And also I have to just to set the scene right. The trip in itself, it was on a strengthened hulled ship. There is a difference between a strengthened hulled ship and an icebreaker. Now this is technical, but I like being precise. So an icebreaker is a huge ship that normally is used for expedition, obviously scientific or whatever expedition in Antarctica, to break the ice, because obviously, as you can imagine, parts of the sea get frozen, especially over the winter period. Yeah. But the ship that was hired by Peter Bland and his mate in crime, Nick Halleck, who were the leaders of the expedition, it was a strengthened hull, experiment purposely built vessel. So a medium-sized kind of ship, not as big as those cruise liner that you can see these days, also in Antarctica, at all. But it wasn't as small as a two-mast sailing boat, right? So it was quite big compared to a sailing boat. And yes, and so we crossed the Drake Passage, which is the part of the sea that basically separates the South American continent with the Antarctic continent. And we sailed through a week, basically, in the Antarctic Peninsula. That, just to put things into perspective for listeners, it's a tiny, minute little bit of Antarctica, because Antarctica is a huge continent. If I remember right, I think you can fit in Antarctica Europe and Australia or something like that, it's really big, right? So it wasn't that type of crossing it or stuff like that. But that wasn't the purpose. The purpose of this trip was really to put yourself in an environment as a normal person, right? In an environment where possibly never in your life thought to put yourself through. You know, very extreme, because even if you were in a ship, of course, it wasn't freezing inside, but you still come into contact with an environment which is very hostile, even in summer. So we did stuff like kind of kayaking, ice camping, ice climbing. So some activities, not a huge amount, you know, but some activities outdoors. And you realize very quickly, even if you have 3-4 layers, you bought all the stuff that you were told to buy, etc. You know, you realize you are nothing. You realize that as much as you have on is never enough. And you realize that you are a huge, minute little thing in this humongous place. Even if I'm referring to the part I visited, which is very tiny. So we would need a map to be able to make it clearer for listeners. But the Antarctic Peninsula is really like a little stretch, like it looks like an appendix, you know, that stretches into the what they call it, the part of the ocean, I don't know, the Antarctic Sea, I think, towards the end of the South America. So obviously it's a tiny, minute part. So the landscape would be sheer mountains dropping to the sea, islands, smaller and bigger, and that would be the type of environment. So we didn't go through big stretches of inland, right? So I haven't seen that type of, besides in documentaries, of course, I haven't seen that type of landscape of Antarctica. But the bit that I've seen, because it's the closest to South America, is also the bit that generally, you know, for instance, cruise liner go, because it's very spectacular to see, it's very scenic, it's fantastic. At the same time, it's the closest. So, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds very daunting in a way. I know that you were with a group of people, but the physical challenges must have been quite tremendous. As you said, it's not something, if it hadn't been presented to you, it probably wouldn't be a place that you would have thought of going if Peter Bland and his trip hadn't been there. But not just physical challenge, the mental and emotional challenges of being so small in such a vast expanse, and knowing that actually it's a life-threatening landscape. What were the? I mean, you can imagine the physical challenges, but the mental and emotional ones. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, funnily enough, for me personally, and this is what I put in my book, it was an emotional and psychological challenge. Humongous, possibly one of the biggest I have had in my life so far. Because of certain things that happened. But I've been pretty fit most of my life. I'm not overweight. I've always been pretty athletic. I've always done activities. So even if I've never been an athlete myself, so not exposed to long trainings or anything like that, you know, I didn't have much of a physical challenge in itself. Also, in those 9 months before going there, I did my best to have even more a clean diet. I would do regularly my yoga. I would go jogging. I done as much as I could do to really kind of be on the spot, right? Being fit. So in itself, I knew before setting off, I remember the few days before, I knew that for me, it wouldn't be something physical. So, but I knew, and this is the main thing, the purpose, the intention going there was to test myself. And because that was the intention, when we have a strong intention for something, you know, even if we don't know what is going to happen, that intention is kind of heard by whatever is out there. And so the right thing generally always happens to test us according to our intention. So I knew, and I was quite afraid of this, I knew that something was there for me that would have been just tailor-made for me, for the phase I was in my life back then, to really, well, to test oneself is always beneficial because it can be an initiation, it can be traumatic, it can be whatever. But then there's always the other part of the tunnel. When you come out of the tunnel, there are some pros, right? Not just cons. So I was, I saw it in that way. I saw, well, okay, I will be tested, whatever. It's an unknown thing. So that's why it makes me feel anxious. Because ultimately, we all are guilty of one thing and one thing only. We are afraid of fear. And fear with a capital F. It doesn't matter the label that fear can have in that particular occasion in our life. It could be any sort of thing. But bottom line is the feeling of fear. Of feeling, oh, I'm not ready, or how I'm going to face this, or whatever is the question that pops up in our mind. We are afraid of not being ready, prepared, equipped, or whatever it is. And then it can be physical, but even more challenging, at least for me, is when it's emotional. Hey, that starts the fun. Or psychological, meaning that, just to be practical, to deal with your mind chatter, or call it the monkey mind. It's terrible. It's one of the most difficult things we all face in our life, you know. Yes. So when you are in an environment where you think there is silence, there isn't much, not because somebody is playing the music, it's because nature over there is very loud. But I mean, there is a lack of human noise, right? You are really left with yourself and your thoughts. And as we know, you can't, it's very difficult to get rid of our luggage, right? Yeah. So we take it with us. So you can imagine for me coming out of something so big in my life, a divorce, you know, a relationship break up, and so horrible. And, you know, basically we ended up going to court twice. Well, he started the process, but you know, it's not me pointing the finger, because in a relationship it's 50-50, okay? So doesn't matter who decides to file divorce or not, it is absolutely not relevant, you know. So, but just to say, you know, I've been faced something that I never thought in my life it will happen to me. I'm such a peaceful little angel, you know. Why on earth one day somebody might decide, or even my husband, to take me to court? Something I never planned for that.
It's interesting. Yeah. So, what lessons? When the trip was over, what lessons did you take away from it, and how changed were you when you got back?
Well, difficult to answer in a short way. I went and I realized I had to face whatever would come my way. I did. And also what happened was, before going, I wanted to make a documentary out of the trip. So I bought myself a camcorder and a new camera to be able to take better quality still pictures and to film. By the way, I never done that before in my life. I mean, filming, taking pictures, yes, a long time, but you know. And I couldn't afford to take somebody with me who could do that for me. That would have been the plan, but I didn't have funds. And so I thought, okay, I equipped myself the best I could, and off I went. And then the big thing that happened over there, that I was totally unplanned, and that was thrown at me to test me, was that an accident happened. I lost my gear. And that was possibly the thing that to me, it meant the most and was the dearest after my life, of course. And so basically the rest of, and this happened when I set foot the very first day on the continent. So the beginning of the trip in itself. So I lived through the whole journey, trying to come to terms, coming out of the trauma, trying to come to terms with something I really didn't know. Even if I have been in a personal development for a long time, I trained in this and that and read heaps of books and all the things you can think under the sun. But we all know when life happens to us, or as they say, the shit hits the fan, right? All those things, they are blown away. They go down the drain, and we are just left with us, meaning this body, obviously, and our thoughts and fears, or hopes, or whatever. And so that's the real test.
That's interesting, because in hindsight, do you think that if you had all that equipment, you would not have gone so deep into yourself? You'd have had something else to concentrate on, but without the equipment, without being able to do the filming, you had only yourself. You didn't have any distraction.
Yes, and that was exactly the test I went through, not knowing, obviously, because I didn't have warnings before. Otherwise, where is the initiation? So that it was exactly with hindsight, obviously, the test I had to go through to go into this place of the dark night of the soul, and being tested, and I hated it, and I screamed, I kicked, and I, figuratively speaking, I was a wreck. I was even more a wreck than after the divorce. There you go. I went there to kind of heal, and there I was dropped at the deep end of everything. And you asked me about the lessons. I'm going to answer your question. Not so much on the spot, meaning during the trip, and not so much even after the post trip, because after we went back to Ushuaia with the group. We still had a few days of activities there, and then we parted. But I traveled for another month or 3 weeks on my own in South America. But still, even in that period, after I left the group, I realized I was starting digesting stuff. But it wasn't until I went back home. At the time, home meant I was living in London and in Brixton, and I can tell you the shock of going from the Patagonian prairies or the ice cape of Antarctica back to Brixton in London. It was shocking, it was just, and then it was when I had my second crisis. Or my first crisis post-trip, because I couldn't fit in. I couldn't fit in back into what I was before. And in the same time, by then, I was starting digesting and realizing what happened, what was for me, what represented for me. And at the time, the big thing was I wanted terribly still do something, a sort of documentary, right, with the stuff I managed to take back, and so I was so focused in my thing, as we sometimes do in life, right? I so all my energy went in that direction. But when something is not meant to be, because again we have to learn something, or we have to grow, or call it how you prefer to call it. It doesn't happen. So it didn't happen. Nothing was happening. And so I screamed, figuratively speaking, and kicked even more. And it was only 3 years later, in 2011, when I started realizing, okay, shall I keep fooling myself or kidding myself for another few years, or maybe shall I do something else? And then it just dawned on me, because I thought, well, if I write a book, it means that anybody I might come across in the future who might be interested in my project, if I got a book, at least I can give it to him or her, and she or he can read it. It's already a step forward, right? And so I thought, oh, yeah, good idea, Gabriella. So it was only then, imagine, 3 years later, that I realized, oh, maybe I should do that. So this just to show how sometimes our life, you know, goes into stages, and we can't really speed it up as much as we would like to. Put it on speed, because I don't like this bit. Let's put it on speed, skipping, you know, no? And the more one wants to be speedy, you know, to go through it because we feel uncomfortable, it's painful, whatever, the more we kick and scream, you know, the worse it gets. So it slows us down. So I really had to kind of land back into my body, UK, and whoever Gabriella Guglielminotti Trivel was, to be able to then think, oh, I could do that. And so I did, and then eventually published the book in 2012.
It does take a process, doesn't it? And because it was such a deep experience, it's like peeling off the layers of an onion, isn't it? You know, you probably get triggered by different things, and suddenly you realize, oh, that bit needs a bit more. And it does, you know, a slow cooker is much better than the microwave with these things, isn't it? The $1 million question is, would you do it again, or are there any other adventures that you'd like to go on?
Yes, very good question. I have to confess, I'm a very much an adventurous spirit. And 8 years later, because we are in 2016, so exactly 8 years later, I have to confess, I would love to test myself again in a different way, of course, but I would really like to go on a different adventure again. But if I listen to my wisdom, I have to confess and share this. The young me is very appealed to adventures because they are intriguing, interesting, and if you have the travel bug, as I have, there's nothing better than that. I can't think of anything better than that. Besides writing, I love writing, but anyway, right? But it's a very active, so it's entertaining. Now, the adventure, it was entertaining, even if it was traumatic, but it was entertaining. And then it was only when I did the writing bit that is introspective, you know. So I kind of digested, and it almost closed, yeah, a chapter that in my life obviously changed me, made me mature a lot, and all the rest of it. And so now, with that wisdom that I did my best to put in my book, Antarctic Odyssey, A New Beginning, now with that wisdom on board, because I have to take it on board, otherwise I would be an hypocrite, I'm not sure if to have another adventure, or that type of adventure, if it is what you meant, it would be the right thing for me. And I tell you why, because after the year after I came back from Antarctica, exactly in the same month, I became aware of my life purpose. which is of helping, working with women and the female consciousness. So because that happened to me, you see, it's almost like I entered a different section of my life where I see a more meaningful adventure is what I've been actually doing in these 5-6 years, or been trying to do, or doing my best to do what I do. So in a way, to answer your question, is I've been on an adventure for 6-7 years. That is even far more challenging than Antarctica.
And it's possibly not one that you would have gone on.
No, yes.
Gone through that.
And like the one of Antarctica, apparently things coming out of the blue, but I don't think things do come out of the blue. We call them. So anyway, however you want to put it, you know, or I manifested it. It's an Ning word to say these days, to manifest stuff. But anyway, the thing is, no, I never thought when I was little, or even when I was younger, I thought I would go to Antarctica. Forget it. I would think I go to Africa, Australia, whatever, but not to Antarctica. And that just appeared, okay? I never thought when I was younger that one day I would educate women about menstruation. Forget it. I never thought that. And that did show up in my life. So what can I say? Life is so unpredictable. That's why my motto is life is an adventure. Discover it.
It really is. It's lovely talking to you, because you've really you put yourself out there, and you found your purpose, possibly through going through all those trials and tribulations, because you came out of it the other end understanding more than people who play safe. So congratulations for that. Now, if anybody would like to get in touch with Gabriella about her book, I'll hand it over to her in a minute, just to give you her contact details. Be a fascinating read, but not just because of Antarctica, but because she went through things that a lot of people go through, and so can maybe show you how that can help you, that kind of perspective can help you in your own lives. You never can tell. But anyway, Gabriella, how can people contact you and get a copy of your book if they so wish?
Yes, people, they can find all the info, videos, the footage that I've edited so far is still in the process of finishing, but most of it has been published. It's on my website, Flying Inspiration, written in one word, flyinginspiration.com. And they found a page called My Book. And there they can find the links to Amazon or the Endless Bookcase website, or it's also available on Nook and on Kobo. This from this month is not just an ebook, but is a paperback, and is available, and so people can order it. They can order it in black and white, and they can order it in color. For the contents of it, obviously in the pictures, they are in the book. It makes sense to spend a bit more and have the color version. But if one's get the ebook, obviously you can see all the pictures in colors. It's up to you. But I think, as you said, Sue, the main thing is this is not a touristic book. It's not a guidebook, you know. It's an inner journey that at a certain point, I decided to share with the rest of the world, because I really felt called to. Basically, in those 3 years between I went, so March 2008, And then when I wrote it, which was May, June 2011, in that gap of 3 years, I had this voice, inner voice, and in the beginning was very silent or not that noisy. That was kind of keeping at me, you know, you have to do something, I'll do something. Then it became clear and clear with the time going by that I had to write something. And then I became aware and I thought, oh, maybe a book. Hello, Eureka. And so I really decided to go and write it because of exhaustion. That voice became so loud that I had to do something about it. And not only that, but I didn't want to just write like a travelogue, you know, or travel diary. Yes, the book narrates what happened day by day, but it's really me telling the story with hindsight. So with all the lessons that by then I could realize I learned, or I got, or I discovered down there. So it's really a book that was the result of much of soul searching, going through the dark night of the soul and questioning, you know, why on earth I went there? Who is Gabriella? What do I want to do? You know, and this question, we all have them, and we all come across them sooner or later in life.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Anybody that's on a voyage of discovery, you just can't play safe. You just live a grey life, don't you? If you play safe, you've got to do something. I mean, my one was going to Portugal, and that gave me the absolute trust in the universe that as long as you trusted and you didn't panic, you left fear behind, or you didn't let fear overtake you, everything was going to be okay, and you would be protected and looked after. And you know, so we all go through our different ones in the different places we're led to. I mean, I was fortunate; it was a bit of a warmer place. Nice in the sea, the sun, the sand. You think a beautiful place. You know, I don't know how I'd fare in the Icelands, but Gabriella, it's been lovely and very, very interesting listening to you about your book. So anyway, you've got all the information. This interview will be on the Soulfully Connecting YouTube channel, which you might find it on there, and also on our website. So the Soulfully Connecting website is www.soulfully-connecting.com. So this is Sue Ellam signing off for now, and thank you very much, Gabriella.
Thank you very much, Sue. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye, everybody.